Good evening, and welcome back. Tonight, we're traveling back over 3,000 years to ancient Egypt during the reign of Ramesses II, one of the most powerful pharaohs in Egyptian history. But we're not following Pharaoh himself, nor his generals or priests. Instead, we're following a scribe, one of the thousands of educated men who made Egyptian civilization function through their careful record-keeping and administration. Get comfortable, settle into your space, and let's journey to the Nile Valley in the 13th century, before the Common Era. Your name is Amenhotep, and you are a scribe in the service of the royal granaries during the 19th dynasty of Egypt. You're 32 years old, and you've been working as a scribe since you were 14, when you completed your training at the temple school. Your father was also a scribe, as was his father before him. The profession runs in your family, passed down through generations, along with the knowledge of hieroglyphic and hieratic writing, mathematics, and the endless procedures of Egyptian bureaucracy. It's early morning in the month of Akhet, the season of inundation, when the Nile floods and covers the fields with fertile silt. The agricultural year in Egypt revolves around the Nile's cycles. Akhet, the flooding season, Pare, the growing season, and Shemu, the harvest season. You are currently stationed at one of the royal granaries near Memphis, the ancient capital. Though you travel regularly to other sites along the Nile to conduct audits and inspections, you wake in your modest house in the scribe's quarter of the city. Your home is comfortable by Egyptian standards. Mud brick walls plastered and painted white, a flat roof where you sometimes sleep in hot weather, several rooms including a reception area, sleeping chambers, and a small courtyard. Your wife, Mutnofret, is already awake, supervising the household slaves. You own 3, which marks you as belonging to the comfortable middle class of Egyptian society. You rise from your bed, a wooden frame with rope netting, and a mattress stuffed with reeds. The morning is already warm, as Egyptian mornings always are. You perform your morning ablutions, washing your face and hands in water brought by a slave, cleaning your teeth with a chew stick made from a tree branch, and carefully shaving your head and face with a copper razor. Like most Egyptian men of the professional classes, you're clean-shaven and bald, wearing a wig only for formal occasions. You dress in your work clothing, a simple white linen kilt that falls to your knees, tied at the waist. In cooler weather, you might add a linen shirt, but the mornings are already too warm for extra layers. Around your neck, you place your most important possession, an amulet of Thoth, the god of writing and wisdom, patron of scribes. This amulet was given to you by your father when you completed your training, and you've worn it every day since. Breakfast is simple: bread, figs, and beer. Egyptian bread is coarse, made from emmer wheat ground on stone, and often contains grit that wears down teeth. The beer is thick and nutritious, made from partially baked barley bread that's been crumbled and fermented. It's not particularly alcoholic, and it's the standard drink for all Egyptians. Water from the Nile can be contaminated, but beer is safe. You eat while reviewing your duties for the day. As a scribe of the granaries, your primary responsibility is keeping accurate records of grain stores. This might sound simple, but it's actually one of the most important jobs in Egypt. Grain is the foundation of the Egyptian economy. It's used for bread and beer, the staples of the Egyptian diet. It's paid as wages to workers. It's used in trade. It's stored as reserves against years of poor harvest. The pharaoh's power rests partly on his control of grain supplies, and accurate records are essential to that control. You gather your tools, your most precious possessions as a scribe. First, your pallet, a rectangular piece of wood with two circular depressions carved into it. One depression holds red ochre, the other black soot, both mixed with gum to form ink. You have a small pot of water for diluting the ink and cleaning your brushes. Your brushes are made from rushes, cut at an angle and chewed at the end to create a brush-like tip. You have several in various stages of wear. You also carry papyrus, sheets of writing material made from the papyrus plant that grows abundantly along the Nile. Papyrus is valuable, and you are careful not to waste it. For rough calculations and temporary notes, you use ostraca, pottery shards or limestone flakes that can be written on and then wiped clean or discarded. Finally, you have your measuring tools, a cubit rod for measuring length, weights for measuring grain, and a water clock for measuring time. These tools are standardized, issued by the royal administration to ensure consistency across the kingdom. You place everything in a leather satchel and prepare to leave for the granary. Your wife sees you off at the door, along with your two children, a son of 8 who will eventually train as a scribe like you, and a daughter of 6 who will be married in a few years to form alliances with other scribal families. You kiss them in the Egyptian manner, touching your lips to their cheeks, and set off through the streets. The city is coming alive with the dawn. Memphis is one of the great cities of Egypt, home to perhaps 50,000 people. The streets are narrow, lined with mud brick buildings, some whitewashed, others left natural brown. The air already smells of bread baking, fish from the market, incense from temples, and the less pleasant smells of a city without modern sanitation. You walk past temples where priests are beginning morning rituals, past workshops where artisans are starting their work, past homes of various sizes reflecting the hierarchical nature of Egyptian society. Egypt is a deeply stratified culture. At the top, the pharaoh, who is a living god. Below him, the nobility and the high priests. Then professionals like yourself, scribes, officials, skilled artisans. Below you, the vast mass of peasant farmers and laborers. And at the bottom, slaves. Though Egyptian slavery is different from what it will become in later civilizations. Slaves have some legal rights and can sometimes earn their freedom. The granary complex is located near the river, which makes sense since grain arrives by boat from farms throughout the region. The complex is impressive, a series of large mud brick buildings with high walls and narrow openings to keep the interior cool and dry. Each building is a vast storage hall filled with grain bins made of mud brick, plastered to prevent moisture and pests. You arrive at the scribe's office, a separate building where the administrative work of the granary is conducted. Several other scribes are already present, along with the chief scribe, a man named Tahotep, who's been managing this granary for 20 years. He's your superior, and you treat him with appropriate respect. Amenhotep, he greets you. We have deliveries arriving today from 3 estates upriver. You'll supervise the measuring and recording. You nod. This is routine work, but it requires absolute accuracy. Any discrepancy between what should arrive and what actually does must be investigated immediately. The morning is spent in preparation. You review the records from the estates in question checking last year's harvest reports, tax assessments, and payment schedules. Egyptian record keeping is meticulous. Every estate has detailed records of its land area, expected productivity, tax obligations, and delivery schedules. This information is updated annually, and copies are maintained at both local and central archives. The estates sending grain today are all royal properties, meaning they belong directly to the pharaoh rather than to temples or private individuals. Royal estates are expected to provide grain for various purposes: feeding workers on royal construction projects, provisioning the army, maintaining reserves in royal granaries, and providing rations for the pharaoh's household and administration. Around mid-morning, the first boats arrive. These are cargo boats, flat-bottomed vessels designed for the Nile, propelled by oars and sails. Each boat is loaded with large ceramic jars filled with grain. The boats tie up at the granary dock and the unloading begins. Your job is to supervise the measurement and recording of every jar of grain. Workers carry the jars from the boats to a measuring area where you've set up your station. Each jar is weighed using a balance scale, a wooden beam suspended from a stand, with pans hanging from each end. You place standard weights in one pan and the jar of grain in the other, adjusting until they balance. The standard unit of measurement for grain is the hekar, roughly equivalent to 5 liters. Most jars hold between 2 and 5 hekar. You call out each measurement, and your assistant scribe records it on a papyrus sheet. Each entry includes the weight of grain, which boat it came from, and which estate sent it. This work requires intense concentration. A mistake in measuring or recording could have serious consequences. If you record more grain than actually arrived, you're creating a false surplus that will be discovered during audits. If you record less, you're potentially allowing theft to go unnoticed. Either way, you could be held responsible, and punishments for scribal errors are severe. Beatings are common, and serious fraud can result in exile or worse. The morning grows hotter as you work. The sun is merciless in Egypt, even though you're working in the shade of an awning. Sweat runs down your face, making it difficult to see clearly. You pause periodically to wipe your face with a cloth and drink water brought by an assistant. By noon, the first boat has been completely unloaded and measured. The total comes to 347 hekat of emmer wheat. You compare this to the expected delivery from this estate, 350 hekat. There's a discrepancy of 3 hekat. This is a problem. Discrepancies must be explained. Either the estate short-delivered, someone stole grain during transport, your measurement is wrong, or the original assessment was incorrect. You need to investigate. You question the boat captain, a weather-beaten man who's been transporting grain on the Nile for 30 years. Were all the jars that were loaded at the estate delivered here? You ask. Yes, Master Scribe, he replies. We loaded 23 jars, and we delivered 23 jars. Nothing was lost or taken. Were the jars full when loaded? I don't know, Master. The estate scribes supervise the loading. I just transport what I'm given. You make a note to investigate further. You'll need to send a message to the estate's scribe, asking him to verify his records. If his records show he sent 350 hekat, but only 347 arrived, then something happened during transport. If his records show he only sent 347, then the problem is with the original assessment. This is typical of your work, not just measuring and recording, but investigating discrepancies, tracking down errors, maintaining the accuracy of the entire system. It's detail-oriented work that can be tedious, but it's also important. The kingdom's economy depends on accurate grain records. The second boat arrives around midday. You take a brief break for the main meal of the day, more bread, some onions, a bit of dried fish, and beer. You eat quickly, sitting in the shade, then return to work. The second boat's cargo is measured and recorded. This time, the total matches the expected amount exactly, 412 hecate of barley. You're relieved. Discrepancies mean extra work, and you have enough to do already. The third boat doesn't arrive until late afternoon. You're tired now, your eyes strained from hours of close work in bright sunlight. But the work must be done. You supervise the measurement of this final delivery, 289 hecate of emmer wheat, which again matches the expected amount. With all three boats unloaded and measured, you now must complete the paperwork. You return to the scribe's office and begin preparing the official records. Using your best handwriting, you create a permanent record on papyrus of the day's deliveries. Each entry is written in hieratic script, the cursive form of hieroglyphics used for everyday documents. The record includes the date, written as year 27 of the reign of Usermat-Re Setepen-Re, which is Ramesses II's throne name, month 2 of Akhet, day 15. Then you list each delivery, the estate name, the amount received, the type of grain, the name of the boat captain who delivered it, and your own name as the supervising scribe. The discrepancy in the first delivery is also noted, along with your decision to investigate further. In Egyptian bureaucracy, everything must be documented. If this discrepancy later becomes a serious problem, there must be a paper trail showing that you identified it and took appropriate action. This record keeping takes several hours. Writing on papyrus requires care. The material is valuable, and mistakes can't be easily erased. You form each hieratic sign carefully, dipping your brush in the black ink for regular text and switching to red ink for totals and important notations. By the time you finish, the sun is setting. The day's work has taken from sunrise to sunset, and you're exhausted. Your hand aches from hours of writing. Your eyes are strained. Your back hurts from standing and bending over your work all day. But the work is done, and done accurately. The grain has been measured, recorded, and stored. The records are complete and filed. You've done your job, contributing your small part to the functioning of Egyptian civilization. You walk home through streets that are now lit by oil lamps in the windows of homes and shops. The city takes on a different character at night, quieter, more mysterious. You pass the palace complex, where Ramesses II resides when he's in Memphis. The palace is enormous, a sprawling complex of buildings surrounded by high walls, lit by hundreds of torches. Inside, the pharaoh is dining with nobles, attended by servants, living a life of luxury that you can barely imagine. But you don't envy the pharaoh or the nobles. Your life is comfortable enough. You have meaningful work, a family, security. You're part of a profession that's respected and essential. Scribes are the backbone of Egyptian administration, and you're proud to be one of them. At home, your wife has prepared dinner, lentil stew with vegetables, more bread, dates for dessert. You eat with your family, discussing the day. Your son asks about your work, curious about the life he'll enter when he's old enough. You explain what you did today, trying to make the tedious details sound interesting. Is it hard to be a scribe, father? He asks. Yes, you answer honestly. The training is difficult, and the work requires constant attention, but it's also rewarding. We scribes keep Egypt running. Without our records, the granaries couldn't function, taxes couldn't be collected, trade couldn't be conducted. We're more important than we seem. After dinner, you have a little leisure time. You're literate, which is rare in Egypt. Probably less than 1% of the population can read and write. This gives you access to knowledge that most Egyptians never have. You own several papyrus scrolls, copies of wisdom literature, poems, even a copy of the Book of the Dead, the collection of spells meant to guide the deceased through the afterlife. Tonight, you read from the instructions of Ptahhotep, an ancient wisdom text. Follow your heart as long as you live, it advises. Do no more than is required. Do not shorten the time of following desire, for the wasting of time is an abomination to the spirit. Good advice, though sometimes hard to follow. Your work often requires doing more than the minimum, and you rarely have time for leisure. By the time you go to bed, you're thoroughly exhausted. You lie on your mattress, your wife beside you, and quickly fall asleep. The next day follows a similar pattern. You wake early, eat breakfast, go to the granary, spend the day measuring and recording grain deliveries, come home exhausted, and the day after that, and the day after that. The weeks pass in this rhythm. Your work varies somewhat. Some days you're measuring incoming deliveries. Other days you're supervising distributions of grain to workers or merchants. Still, other days you're conducting audits of the granary's inventory. The audits are particularly important. Every month, you and the other scribes must count all the grain in storage, checking it against the records. This is an enormous task. The granary stores tens of thousands of hectares of grain, kept in hundreds of bins. Each bin must be measured, either by volume or by weight, and the total compared to what the records say should be there. Discrepancies in audits are serious. They suggest either theft, spoilage, errors in record keeping, or pest damage. Each discrepancy must be investigated and explained. One month, an audit reveals that one of the storage buildings is short by approximately 200 hectares, a significant amount. Ptahhotep, the chief scribe, assigns you to investigate. You begin by reviewing all the records for that storage building over the past 3 months. Every delivery in, every distribution out. You check the arithmetic carefully, recalculating totals, looking for errors. Egyptian mathematics, it's base 10, similar to modern math, but it's done without the benefit of paper or modern notation. You use your head and your fingers for simple calculations, and for more complex arithmetic, you use a counting board, a flat surface marked with columns representing different powers of 10. After days of careful checking, you find an error. One of the deliveries was recorded incorrectly. Instead of 150 hectares being delivered, someone wrote 350 hectares. The actual grain was never delivered, but the record showed it as received. This created a phantom surplus that didn't actually exist. You trace the error to one of the junior scribes, a young man named Kamwaset, who'd been working here for only a year. You report this to Ptahhotep, who summons Kamwaset. The young scribe is terrified. "Master, I don't remember making such an error," he stammers. "Whether you remember or not, the error is in your handwriting," Ptahhotep says sternly. "This is a serious mistake. Because of your carelessness, our records have been wrong for 3 months." "I'm sorry, Master. I'll be more careful." You certainly will be. You'll find 2 weeks' wages, and you'll spend those 2 weeks rechecking all records you've created since you started work here. Every entry must be verified. If we find more errors, you'll be dismissed. The young man leaves, shaken. You feel some sympathy for him. Everyone makes mistakes, especially when learning. But you also understand the seriousness of accurate record keeping. An error like this, if not caught, could have cascading consequences. The work continues. The seasons pass. Akhet, the flooding season, gives way to Pare, the growing season, when the flood waters recede and farmers plant their crops in the fertile mud left behind. During Pare, your work focuses more on distributing seed grain to farmers and recording what's been distributed. This grain will be counted against next year's harvest when farmers pay their taxes. Then comes Shemu, the harvest season, the busiest time of year for granary scribes. This is when farmers bring in their harvest and when taxes are collected. Your work increases dramatically. Instead of a few boats arriving each day, there are dozens. The granary operates from before dawn until after dark, with scribes working in shifts to measure and record the incoming grain. Harvest time is also when you conduct your annual journey upriver to audit some of the estates. This is both a responsibility and a privilege. You get to travel, see different parts of Egypt, and temporarily escape the routine of granary work. The journey is made by boat, traveling upriver against the current. Fortunately, the prevailing winds in Egypt blow from the north, so boats going south can use sails. The trip to your first destination, an estate about 50 miles upriver, takes 3 days. You travel with 2 other scribes and a small security detail of soldiers. Pirates and bandits are rare on the Nile in this well-governed era. But it's wise to take precautions. You're carrying valuable equipment and official seals, and you represent the pharaoh's authority. The journey is actually pleasant. The Nile is beautiful, lined with green fields and palm trees, dotted with villages and temples. You watch the life of the river pass by. Fishermen casting nets, farmers irrigating fields, women washing clothes at the river's edge, children playing in the shallows. You arrive at the estate on the morning of the 3rd day. The estate is large, consisting of several thousand aroras of farmland. An aurora is about 2/3 of an acre. The estate is managed by an overseer who reports to the royal administration, and it employs hundreds of workers, farmers, herdsmen, craftsmen, and servants. The estate has its own scribes who keep local records, but your job is to audit those records, verifying that they're accurate and that the estate is meeting its obligations to the royal granaries. You're received formally by the estate overseer, a man named Nacht. He's nervous. Audits are stressful for estate managers. If you find serious discrepancies, he could be punished or dismissed. "Welcome, Master Scribe," he says, bowing respectfully. "Everything is prepared for your inspection." You nod formally. "I'll need to see all records for the past year, production totals, distribution to workers, seed allocations, and deliveries to the royal granaries." "Of course, Master. My scribes have everything ready." You spend the next week at the estate, reviewing records in painstaking detail. You check arithmetic, compare records to physical evidence, interview workers to verify that they receive the wages recorded as paid to them. You inspect the granaries to estimate how much grain is currently in storage. It's tedious work, but you're thorough. You find several minor errors, arithmetic mistakes, misdated entries, unclear handwriting. These are noted but aren't serious. What you don't find is evidence of fraud or major theft, which is good. The estate appears to be honestly managed. On your final day, you meet with Knack to discuss your findings. The estate's records are generally acceptable, you tell him. There are some minor errors that need correction, but nothing serious. Your scribes should be more careful with their arithmetic and handwriting. But overall, the management appears honest and competent. Nukt is visibly relieved. Thank you, Master Scribe. We try to serve the Pharaoh faithfully. You prepare your official report, documenting your audit and findings. This report will be filed at the granary and also sent to the Central Archives in Memphis. Somewhere in those vast archives, there are reports from hundreds of audits conducted over decades, all contributing to the detailed knowledge the royal administration maintains about the entire kingdom. The journey back downriver is faster. You're traveling with the current now, and it takes only 2 days to return to Memphis. Back at the granary, you resume your normal duties. The rhythm of the work continues, measuring, recording, filing, auditing, day after day, month after month, year after year. You're now 35 years old, and you've been working as a scribe for 21 years. You're experienced, skilled, trusted with important responsibilities. Ptahhotep is getting old, and there's talk that you might eventually succeed him as chief scribe. This would mean more responsibility, but also higher pay and greater prestige. Your family is growing. Your wife is pregnant with your 3rd child. Your son is now 11 and has begun his formal training as a scribe, attending the temple school just as you did. Your daughter is 9 and will soon be married. You're currently negotiating with the family of another scribe for a marriage alliance. Life is good by Egyptian standards. You're healthy, employed, respected. You have a comfortable home, adequate food, a loving family. You're part of a tradition stretching back thousands of years. Egyptian scribes have been keeping records since the time of the pyramids, over 1,000 years before your birth. One day, an unusual assignment arrives. A messenger from the royal palace brings a scroll sealed with the pharaoh's seal. Ptahhotep opens it, while you and the other senior scribes watch. The scroll contains orders for a special audit. Ramesses II is planning a massive construction project, a new temple complex dedicated to himself and the gods. This project will require enormous resources, including grain to feed the thousands of workers who will build it. The pharaoh wants an inventory of all grain reserves in the royal granaries to determine how much can be allocated to the construction project. This is a major undertaking. The royal granary system includes dozens of granaries throughout Egypt. Each one must be audited, its current stocks counted and reported. The task will take months and require coordination among scribes across the kingdom. Ptahhotep assigns you to lead the audit team for the Memphis region. You'll be responsible for auditing 10 granaries, compiling the results, and reporting to the central administration. This is both an honor and a burden. It's a sign of trust in your abilities, but it's also an enormous amount of work. For the next 3 months, your life will be consumed by this project. You begin by selecting a team of junior scribes to assist you. You choose carefully, picking men who are accurate and trustworthy. You brief them on the project and establish procedures to ensure consistency. Then you begin the audits. You and your team travel from granary to granary, spending several days at each one. The work is repetitive but demanding. Every storage bin must be measured. Every jar of grain must be counted. All records must be reviewed and verified. At one granary, you find a significant discrepancy. The records claim the granary holds 15,000 hecad of emmer wheat, but your measurement shows only 12,000. 3,000 hecad is missing. This is serious. Such a large discrepancy suggests either major theft or catastrophic spoilage. You investigate immediately, interviewing the granary scribes and workers, reviewing records in detail, inspecting the storage buildings for evidence of pest damage or water damage. Eventually, you discover the problem. One of the storage buildings had a leak in the roof that went unrepaired for months. Rainwater got in and spoiled a large quantity of grain. The spoiled grain was removed and discarded, but the records were never updated to reflect the loss. This is negligence, but not fraud. The chief scribe of this granary is reprimanded and required to submit a full report explaining the spoilage. The records are corrected to reflect the actual quantity on hand. After 3 exhausting months, the audit is complete. You compile all the results into a master report. The total grain reserves in the Memphis region granaries amount to approximately 875,000 hecad, enough to feed a large workforce for several months, or a smaller workforce for a much longer period. You present this report to Ptahhotep, who praises your thoroughness. Excellent work, Amenhotep. This is exactly the kind of detailed information the pharaoh needs to plan his construction project. Your report is forwarded to the central administration, where it's combined with reports from other regions to give the pharaoh a complete picture of available grain reserves throughout the kingdom. Several weeks later, word comes back that the pharaoh was pleased with the audit. As a reward, you're granted a bonus of grain, enough to feed your family for 2 months. This is a significant gift, and you're grateful for the recognition. But more important than the material reward is the knowledge that your work mattered. Your careful record keeping and audit will help ensure that the pharaoh's construction project succeeds, that workers are fed, that Egypt's grain reserves are managed properly. This is why Yesuadu became a scribe, not for wealth or fame. There are easier ways to achieve those, but for the satisfaction of knowing that your work is essential, that you're contributing to something larger than yourself, that you're part of the great machinery that makes Egyptian civilization function. The years continue to pass. You're 40 now, middle-aged by Egyptian standards. You've been promoted to deputy chief scribe, second only to Ptahhotep. When he retires in a few years, you'll likely succeed him. Your children are growing up. Your son is 15 now and has completed his basic training as a scribe. He's working as a junior scribe at the granary, learning the practical aspects of the profession. Your daughter is married to the son of another scribe, a good match that strengthens your family's position. Your younger son, born during your busiest year, is now 6 and will soon begin his own scribal training. Your life has found a comfortable routine. You wake, eat, go to the granary, work all day managing the flow of grain through the Egyptian economy. Come home to your family. It's not an exciting life by the standards of adventure stories, but it's satisfying. You're good at what you do, and what you do matters. One day, Ptahhotep calls you into his office. He's an old man now, perhaps 70, which is an extraordinary age in ancient Egypt. He served as chief scribe for nearly 30 years. and he's earned his rest. Amenhotep, he says, I've decided to retire. I've recommended to the vizier that you be appointed as my successor. Your heart leaps. Chief scribe of the Memphis Royal Granary is one of the most important administrative positions in Egypt. It comes with significant authority, higher pay, and the responsibility of managing one of the kingdom's most critical resources. Master, I'm honored by your trust, you say, bowing deeply. You've earned it, Ptahhotep replies. You're careful, honest, and thorough. These are the qualities a chief scribe needs. The granaries require constant vigilance. One careless scribe can create chaos. One dishonest scribe can steal enough to cause shortages. But a good chief scribe keeps everything running smoothly. I'll do my best to honor your example, Master. I know you will. You're ready for this responsibility. The appointment is confirmed, and you become chief scribe of the Memphis Royal Granary. Your responsibilities increase significantly. You're now responsible, not just for your own work, but for supervising dozens of other scribes, managing the granary's operations, making decisions about distributions and allocations, and reporting directly to the vizier's office. The work is demanding, but you've been preparing for it your entire career. You know the procedures, you understand the systems, and you've developed good judgment through years of experience. As chief scribe, you also have some privileges. You're allocated a larger house in a better neighborhood. Your family's social status rises. You're invited to more formal occasions. Your opinions on administrative matters are sought by other officials. Your children have better marriage prospects because of your position. But with privilege comes responsibility. You're accountable for everything that happens in the granary system under your supervision. Any major theft, any serious shortfall, any significant error, all reflect on you. You must be constantly vigilant, always checking, always supervising. The work doesn't get easier as you get older. If anything, it becomes more challenging. Your eyesight isn't what it used to be, making it harder to read the tiny hieratic writing in records. Your hand cramps more easily when you write for long periods. Your back and legs hurt from standing and walking all day. But you continue because this is your duty, your profession, your contribution to Egypt. Every jar of grain properly measured, every record accurately kept, every audit thoroughly conducted. All of this helps keep Egyptian civilization functioning. You think sometimes about the bigger picture. Egypt has existed for thousands of years. The pharaohs claim descent from the gods themselves. The Great Pyramids were built over 1,000 years before your time, and they still stand, eternal monuments to Egyptian power and skill. But the pyramids, magnificent as they are, required bread for the workers who built them. And bread requires grain, and grain requires careful management, farming, storing, distributing, recording. The scribes who kept those grain records were as essential to building the pyramids as the architects who designed them or the workers who hauled the stones. This is the hidden truth of civilization. The great monuments, the powerful armies, the vast territories, all of these rest on foundations of mundane work. Farmers growing grain, merchants transporting it, scribes recording it. Without this everyday work, nothing else is possible. You're 50 years old now, and you've been chief scribe for 10 years. You're one of the most experienced administrators in the Memphis region. Young scribes look up to you, seeking your advice and guidance. You train them as you were trained, passing on the knowledge and skills of your profession. Your son, now 25, is a capable scribe in his own right, working at a different granary. He's married and has children of his own, your grandchildren. The scribal tradition in your family continues into another generation. Your daughter has given you grandchildren as well. Your younger son is 15 and nearing the completion of his scribal training. Your family is established, secure, respected. Life is good, not perfect. You're aging. You have aches and pains. You worry about various things. But overall, you've had a successful life and career. You've done meaningful work, provided for your family, maintained the standards of your profession. One year, disaster strikes. The Nile fails to flood properly. The inundation is weak. The waters don't rise high enough. And large areas of farmland don't receive the life-giving silt that makes Egyptian agriculture so productive. This means the next harvest will be poor. And a poor harvest means potential shortages, hunger, possibly even famine. As chief scribe of the royal granary, you're suddenly at the center of crisis management. The grain reserves that you've been carefully managing and recording become critical. The pharaoh needs to know exactly how much grain is available, how long it will last, how it should be distributed. You work day and night, compiling reports, calculating how much grain is needed to feed the population until the next harvest, determining how much can be distributed and how much must be held in reserve. You coordinate with other granaries throughout the region, sharing information, developing contingency plans. The work is stressful, but it's also when your experience and skill truly matter. This is what all the routine measuring and recording has been preparing for, the ability to manage resources during a crisis. Thanks to careful management and adequate reserves, the region avoids severe famine. Rations are reduced, and there's hardship, but no one starves. The poor harvest is endured, and when the next inundation is normal, agriculture returns to its usual productivity. The pharaoh's administration notes your performance during the crisis. You receive commendations and rewards. More importantly, you have the satisfaction of knowing that your work genuinely saved lives. The records you kept, the reserves you managed, the systems you maintained, all of these made the difference between hardship and catastrophe. You're 55 now, getting old by Egyptian standards. Your hair, what little you let grow, is grey. Your body is worn from decades of work. You suffer from arthritis in your hands, a common affliction among scribes who've spent their lives holding brushes and writing. Your eyesight continues to deteriorate, and you now have a young scribe read aloud to you when the text is particularly small or faded. But you're not ready to retire yet. You've seen too many men retire only to die within a few months, as if work was the only thing keeping them alive. You continue your duties, though you delegate more to your deputies and train your successors more intentionally. The seasons continue their eternal cycle. Aked, Pere, Shemu, flooding, growing, harvesting. Year after year, the Nile rises and falls. The fields are planted and harvested. The grain flows through the system you help manage. It's the rhythm of Egyptian life, unchanged for millennia, and you're part of maintaining that rhythm. You begin to think more about death and the afterlife. Like all Egyptians, you believe that death is not an end, but a transition to another form of existence. You've been saving money throughout your career to ensure a proper burial with all the necessary rituals and supplies. You've purchased a tomb in the necropolis, the city of the dead on the west bank of the Nile where the sun sets. It's not a grand tomb like those of the pharaohs or great nobles, but it's respectable. A small rock-cut chamber with a decorated chapel where your family can make offerings. You've commissioned artists to paint the walls with scenes from your life and images of the gods who will judge you in the afterlife. The tomb paintings show you doing what you did in life, sitting cross-legged with your scribe's palette, recording grain deliveries, conducting audits. These images will magically sustain you in the afterlife, allowing you to continue your work even after death. Other paintings show your family, offerings of food and drink, prayers to the gods. You've also commissioned a Book of the Dead scroll, a collection of spells and instructions to guide you through the afterlife. The scroll includes the famous negative confession, where the deceased declares all the sins they didn't commit. I have not killed. I have not stolen. I have not told lies. I have not been angry without just cause. I have not made anyone weep. You hope these declarations are true. You've tried to live an ethical life, following the principles of Ma'at: truth, justice, harmony, balance. You've been honest in your record keeping, fair in your dealings with others, diligent in your work. You've provided for your family, trained your successors, served the Pharaoh faithfully. If the gods judge you worthy, your heart will balance against the feather of Ma'at, and you'll be granted eternal life in the field of reeds, a perfect version of Egypt, where the harvest is always abundant and work is always rewarded. You're 60 now, an age few Egyptians reach. Ptah-hotep, your predecessor, lived to 70, but he was exceptional. Most people die much younger, from disease, accident, or simply the wear of hard living. You can feel your body failing. The arthritis is worse, making it painful to write. You tire easily. You have a persistent cough that won't go away. The granary doctor examines you and prescribes various remedies, herbs, charms, prayers, but nothing helps much. You begin to prepare for the inevitable. You update your will, making sure your property will be divided fairly among your children. You give detailed instructions about your funeral and burial. You make offerings at the temples, asking the gods for a favorable judgment in the afterlife. Your family gathers around you, your wife, Mutnofret, who's been with you for over 40 years, your children, all adults now with families of their own, your grandchildren, some of whom barely know you. They all come to pay respects and say goodbye. Father, your eldest son says, you've had a good life. You've achieved everything a scribe could hope for. I've tried to do my duty, you reply, your voice weak. The work of a scribe is never finished, but I've done what I could. You've done more than that, your son insists. You've kept Egypt's grain supplies secure. You've trained dozens of scribes. You've served the Pharaoh faithfully. Your name will be remembered. You're not sure about that last part. Most scribes are forgotten within a generation or two, but it's kind of him to say. Over the next few days, you grow weaker. You know the end is near. You're not particularly afraid. You've prepared as well as you can for the afterlife, and you've had a good life. You've done meaningful work, raised a family, contributed to your civilization. What more can a person ask for? One morning, you wake feeling worse than usual. You can barely breathe, and there's a terrible pain in your chest. You call for your family, and they gather around your bed. It's time, you tell them. I can feel it. Your wife takes your hand. "Don't leave us," she says, crying. "I must," you reply gently. "Everyone must make this journey eventually. Take care of each other. Remember me." You recite prayers to Osiris, the god of the dead, asking for his protection and guidance in the afterlife. Your family joins in, their voices blending in the ancient words. The pain grows worse. Your vision dims. You can hear your family's voices, but they seem distant now, as if coming from far away. Your last thoughts are of your life's work. All those years of measuring grain, recording deliveries, conducting audits, training scribes. It was good work, important work. You served Egypt faithfully, and then, quietly, you die. Amenhotep, chief scribe of the Memphis royal granary, has completed his journey through life. Your family mourns. The funeral preparations begin immediately. Your body must be preserved through mummification, the process that will allow you to have a body in the afterlife. The embalmers come and take your body to their workshop. Over the next 70 days, they perform the sacred rituals. Your internal organs are removed and placed in canopic jars. Your body is dried with natron salt, then wrapped in linen bandages. Amulets are placed within the wrappings to protect you in the afterlife. The process is expensive, but your family has saved for this, and you've left enough money to ensure it's done properly. During the 70 days of mummification, your family prepares for the funeral. Food offerings are collected. Priests are hired to perform the rituals. Professional mourners are engaged to wail and lament at the funeral procession. Finally, on the 70th day, your mummy is ready. The funeral procession forms. Your mummy on a sledge pulled by oxen, followed by your family, friends, colleagues, and the hired mourners. The procession makes its way through the streets of Memphis, across the Nile by ferry, and up to the necropolis on the west bank. At your tomb, the priests perform the opening of the mouth ceremony, a ritual meant to restore your senses so you can eat, drink, and speak in the afterlife. Offerings of bread, beer, meat, and fruit are placed in the tomb along with your mummy. Your precious scribe's palette is also included. You'll need it for your work in the afterlife. Your eldest son, as your heir, speaks the final words. May Amenhotep live forever in the field of reeds. May he be justified before Osiris. May his name be remembered. The tomb is sealed. The funeral feast is held. And slowly, life returns to normal for your family and colleagues. At the granary, a new chief scribe is appointed, one of your former students, a capable man you trained yourself. The work continues without pause. Grain deliveries arrive and are measured. Records are kept. Audits are conducted. The machinery of Egyptian administration rolls on, indifferent to the death of one scribe, however skilled. Your family maintains your tomb for a generation or two, bringing offerings on festival days, keeping your memory alive. But as decades pass, as those who knew you die themselves, the visits become less frequent. Your grandchildren remember you vaguely. Your great-grandchildren know you only as a name and a painted image on a tomb wall. Centuries pass, millennia. The new kingdom gives way to later dynasties, then to foreign rulers, Persians, Greeks, Romans. Egyptian civilization itself eventually fades, replaced by new cultures, new religions, new ways of organizing society. Your tomb is sealed and forgotten, buried under shifting desert sand. The granary where you worked crumbles into ruin, its mud brick walls melting back into the earth from which they came. The records you so carefully kept, thousands of papyrus scrolls documenting grain deliveries, audits, distributions, gradually decay, attacked by moisture, insects, and time. But not everything is lost. Some records survive, preserved by Egypt's dry climate. Some tombs remain sealed, their contents protected from looters and decay. And thousands of years after your death, archaeologists will discover these remnants of Egyptian civilization. They'll find granary ruins and try to understand how the ancient Egyptian economy functioned. They'll uncover papyrus fragments with hieratic writing recording grain transactions. They'll discover tombs with paintings showing scribes at work, sitting cross-legged with their pallets, recording the flow of Egypt's wealth. They'll study these fragments and gradually piece together an understanding of how ancient Egypt worked, and they'll realize that behind the pharaohs and the monuments, behind the armies and the temples, there was a vast bureaucracy of scribes who kept records, managed resources, and maintained the systems that made everything else possible. Some archaeologist, perhaps, will read a papyrus fragment bearing your name, Amenhotep, scribe of the granary, and wonder about you. Who were you? What was your life like? What did you think about as you sat day after day recording grain deliveries? They'll never know the full answer. Your thoughts, your feelings, your daily experiences, these are lost to time. But they'll know that you existed, that you worked, that you were part of the machinery that kept one of history's greatest civilizations functioning for thousands of years. This was your life, not the life of a pharaoh or a priest, not a life of adventure or glory, but a life of careful work, steady effort, and quiet dedication. You were a scribe in ancient Egypt, a keeper of records, a manager of grain, a small but essential part of a vast and complex civilization. You lived, you worked, you died. And while your name is mostly forgotten, the work you did mattered. Every record you kept, every audit you conducted, every scribe you trained contributed to the functioning of Egyptian society. You were part of something greater than yourself, and that gave your life meaning. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, think about the Amenhoteps of history, the countless people who did unglamorous but essential work, who kept civilizations running through their careful attention to detail, who maintained systems and kept records and ensured that the practical matters of life were handled properly. They're mostly forgotten now. We remember the pharaohs and the generals, the priests and the architects. But we should also remember the scribes, the accountants, the bureaucrats, the people who did the actual work of administration, who kept track of resources, who made sure that when workers needed to be paid, there was grain to pay them with. In some ways, they were more important than the pharaohs. Pharaohs came and went, dynasties rose and fell, but the scribes remained, generation after generation, keeping the same records in the same way, maintaining continuity even as everything else changed. So sleep now, and perhaps dream of the Nile rising in its annual flood, of fields turning green with growing grain, of boats carrying jars of wheat up and down the river, of scribes sitting in the shade with their pallets, recording it all in careful hieratic script. Dream of ancient Egypt, not the Egypt of pyramids and treasures, but the Egypt of daily work and careful administration, the Egypt that really existed for the people who lived there. Dream of Amenhotep, scribe of the granaries, who lived 3,000 years ago, but whose work echoes down through the centuries in the papyrus fragments that survived, in the tomb paintings that remain, in the story we can still piece together of how one ancient civilization organized itself and endured for millennia. Rest now, knowing that every complex society depends on people like Amenhotep, people willing to do careful, tedious work with honesty and dedication. The work may be boring, but it's necessary. The individual may be forgotten, but the contribution remains. Good night, and may your sleep be as peaceful as the eternal rest in the field of reeds that Amenhotep hoped for and probably deserved.